I welcome you all to this edition of Amrita Café. I'm Dr. Shauri Kutappa and I'm with Amrita Vidyapeetham. At Amrita Vidyapeetham, we aspire to join hands with institutions, parents, and guardians to provide value-based education and mold the character of the younger generation through a system of wholesome learning. According to a recent United Nations report, the COVID-19 pandemic has created the largest disruption, affecting nearly 1.6 billion learners in more than 190 countries. This is probably the largest disruption of the education system in history. Parents, guardians, and students are living through complexities in choosing the best options for themselves. Amrita Café aims at serving as a forum to table these challenges and explore solutions to cope with the current education scenario. Via Amrita Café, we aim to provide insightful information to usher transparency in and around education. I'd like to introduce today's panelist, Dr. Manjula Raman, who is the CEO, Academics and Innovation of Royal Concord International Group of Schools at Bangalore. Welcome, Madam. Amrita institutions and the Royal Concord Group of Schools do seem to be grounded in similar principles. Do tell us a little about it.
There are two things that the most important thing that we got from Amrita University was the online, lab. I think that was the most wonderful thing that helped us during pandemic. And that is what connected us so closely with Amrita Vishwapeetham, because when we couldn't get the children to school for almost 2 years, in between we opened it up for 20 days, but again, there was a closure. That was one thing. And I think all the webinars and the connect with schools have been so good that this is one institute that all teachers look up to for their in-service upgradation. And I think that's where the partnership matters.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. For those of you who are just joining us, welcome. In this capsule today, we're going to have a rich discussion. A recorded version of this webinar will be made available on the Amrita Café YouTube channel. We would also love to have your queries on the topic. You are welcome to share your perspectives as well for discussion as the session unfolds. Based on the time at hand, we will endeavor to include as many of these queries as possible. Please do include your names as well. A successful educator is one who is a lifelong learner. The key to a healthy, productive education system is the synergy between school, university, and industry. The choice is simple. Be a lifelong learner or be fossilized. Ma'am, why should teachers be looking at lifelong learning?
Teachers, it's the most important. I think in no other, career, you need to keep pace with a child who's born, every day or every year, and you remain a teacher. And those kids will come into your classroom. So they are the latest addition of human beings who come to our care. And if we get stuck somewhere, which we learned 20 years for a senior person like me, or even a normal teacher, she would have gone to college at least 5 years before she became a teacher. And, 5 years time is a huge gap for a teacher to understand what that new XYZ generation kid wants from you. So it's important that we understand what is the aspiration of that child. It's very, as the sage on the stage, we often think that what we churn out to children, even at the age of 3, 4, 5, 6, they're going to just accept it. No, it's not that. If they are keeping quiet and looking at you, absolutely wondering what you are doing, it's because of indoctrination. They are told that if you do something at home, I'll tell your teacher. So the teacher becomes a kind of something that a child fears, that, it's really wrong, fears or respects to some extent. So what happens is, that's why. But never be carried away that a child in the class doesn't have so many questions coming to his mind and actually scared to tell you, ma'am, you're going all wrong. And we just churn out that. And for that, a teacher has to be a lifelong learner every single day. I wouldn't say that, you can, maybe during the vacation, you can be a learner, or when you have a holiday, you can be. No, I think every moment is a learning experience, and we have to keep on adding that.
20 years, ma'am. Tell us a little about this 20 years of your journey. That's a long,
Yes,
long
it's been
time.
a very long journey. Well, to tell you the truth, when I started my career, I joined the teaching profession because I'd married an army man, so-called army man, who would move to the most distant places where there would be no jobs for a person who had done an MBA. And that was when I thought that when my child was a little baby and I was a very what I'll say, scared mother to leave the child. I wanted to go with the son to a school so that I can keep an eye on him, that he doesn't get hurt. And I'm sure this is the feeling with every mother as you let go of your child in the nursery class or LKG or something. And I was the same. And when I went to the school where he got admitted, the principal said, "Why didn't you join us as a teacher?" And I was the happiest, because that will allow me 24 hours, I mean, whatever, 6 hours, 10 minutes of absolute observation of my kid and being with him. And when I joined, I suddenly found that this was my calling. I cannot be in any other career except being with children. And I must share my first experience in this very school, where between two walls, they'd made a small little, I would say it was a walkway. They'd put some desks and chairs, and there were children right from the age of 6 to 7 to 16. And the principal gave me that class and said, "This is your class." So I was wondering, how come these children are of different ages? Because I had only seen classrooms where we were almost all the same in age, height, and whatever. But this was a classroom which had a little toddlers till maybe 10th class students. They were the ones who were thrown out of classrooms. They were creating problems. And I'm talking about 20, 23 years back, in a small hamlet called Faridkot in Punjab. It's a little village even today. So where my husband was posted. And when I went into a class of such diversified children, I learned my first lesson of making my lesson individualized, that every child, Howard Gardner's Multiple Intelligence, I had not read, I must confess, at that point in time, the book. But what I tried to think and do in the class was very similar to what Howard Gardner. I wish I had read it. It would have been so much easier, because for every day, making an individualized lesson plan for those little kids in the main subjects, that is numerical, languages, and general studies, which I thought was English, was science and social science. And that was the beginning of me becoming a lifelong learner, because those kids taught me that I cannot be in a classroom, take out a book and ask some questions, or to read out something or do something and cover the syllabus. I have to uncover it every single day. And even today, after I finish this session, I would be doing a course with Norwich University, which thankfully I got through British Council free of cost, on a trainer development, how a trainer for in-service teachers can develop. And I'm still learning. And I'm learning from this cafe.
Ma'am, from your words, ma'am, if I may just take this discussion forward. Um, See, in the context of being a lifelong learner, um, what would could you share your thoughts on um, a teacher who probably is comes with a calling versus someone who comes with a B.Ed or M.Ed, a Montessori, or um, whatever the appropriate uh, the appropriate degrees at the respected levels are, or a PhD or whatever. So what are your thoughts on this?
I would say, let me tell you one thing, that a teacher may have come into the job by compulsion, or because she did B.Ed, or because she didn't get a job, like I entered the profession because I married an army man or something. But after that, the children do not leave you to be always being a missionary, a visionary and a missionary. It can never be called a job. Let me tell you this about all teachers, because wherever you are, yes, in your mind, you might be looking at remunerations, what is your, what are the benefits you get. But the very fact that you are dealing with human resources, I think every teacher takes it as his calling. And one who is in an industry and becomes a teacher, again, it is because the interest of the human life that they are molding. We have seen a lot of industrialists becoming teachers because they felt that they have learned so much, they have so much of experience, but there's no one to listen or to share with. So I would think every teacher takes it as his or her calling. The only thing is that sometimes in the milieu of good life, good salaries, conditions of a teacher, we kind of feel that maybe this is not the best profession, and there would be some who would be absolutely passionate. I can't think of anything other than being with children. I just cannot. And I have got everything in my life because of being a teacher. And I always say that Shah Rukh Khan or anybody else is a smaller celebrity than me. Because in 25 years, the kids I taught today are fathers. And their kids remember, oh, Manjula ma'am. And they say, she was our teacher, she was our principal. So now their kids, their parents have become grandparents. So just imagine, from one kid, at least 10 kids, 10 people are my fan, if I have touched their lives right. And I think most of us strive to do that. We may not be brilliant academicians or something, but we are good human beings, because you can get the content from anywhere. You click of the button nowadays. But that transaction that happens, the human transaction while you teach a lesson, is what remains for a lifetime. And especially young teachers, I would say that they may feel that children are not saying thank you, or their parents are not saying thank you when their children do well in the exam, they will go away to college. Let me tell you, when you become as old as me, you will get any number of messages and Facebook or whatever, Insta, saying thank you ma'am for what you did in our life, and we have done so wonderfully well because of you. So that's where I think every teacher is, I would say, a guru.
Very true, very true. um, just bringing our focus to the lighter side of things. um, 2000 2000 students at school versus two kids at home, which is a bigger challenge. Which is a bigger challenge.
I think the two kids at home, I have only one kid. He never listened to me when he was in school. My subjects are English and psychology. Psychology was not in the schools those days. Now we have, but English. And I would tell him to write the answers, or during the exams, he'll say, no, if I write your answers, I'll get zero. I have to write what the teacher says. So it's difficult for you, may be anybody, you may be the president of India. For the kid, you are just a parent and you are not special. And so managing those two or one at home is really difficult. But having said that, all those 2,000 children are what I would say the clones of your own child. When a child is crying, I remember the way my kid cried the first day in school, or when a boy who was my student gets married. The joy that the first question I ask, was she from our school? So, and if it is from the school, wow, it's wonderful. So then I ask the other stories. So the connection somewhere is with the same kind. You have those 2,000 kids as your own kids, because you do, passionately think of their life. You are involved in their life and everything, because in a year I think they spend more time with us than at home, except the pandemic time when they had to stay at home. And I think everybody realized the worth of a teacher. Yeah.
I have no special talent. I'm only passionately curious. I'm very sure Albert Einstein's words need not be reminded. But what is the benefit of being curious and a learning teacher when sometimes teachers are perceived as the learned ones already?
Yeah. Not anymore, I would say. So the reason for upgrading is even critical now. What I would say, that they do have a lot of respect for a teacher, especially outside your room. Like if I'm the principal, there would be a little board which says the MAs, PhDs, whatever I have done in my life. So they may be a little bit in awe of you. But having said that, I think it's only a curious teacher who can keep pace with the curiosity of her student. Because what the student sees where, we do not know, and now where online he sees it is also we do not know, because the answers are always there. So it's important that we only tell them what we know, and if we do not know, we should ask the student what he knows about that, or what, to work on his questions so that we both could reach to an answer about it. I think that brutally being honest, that I do not know, let's check it, or let's find out together, is that collaborative learning that happens between a teacher and a student. And sometimes, especially online, I would always rely on my student guru. They are so much better. I remember I had an old TV, and there was a little toddler of 3 who came to my house. He took that remote and started saying some YouTube, some song. I said, but it doesn't come in my TV because it's an old TV. He says, Aega. So it came, and that was the first day I realized that even my TV has something like Alexa, and it comes. So it's just a 3-year-old became a teacher for me that day. I mean, I had never realized that I can also do that, but that little fellow knew it. So the openness of the mind, that learning happens from, there's no age bar to it, right from a toddler right to 100 years, and to all the experiences around us. So once we are curious about that, why this happened and how it happens, and then we can think about what happened. So I think
Yes.
that really helps. And
Yes.
I don't say that a teacher has to be a walking, talking encyclopedia. You cannot be. You can't know everything. But yes, if there is an interest in the classroom, or if there is something which is the trend of the students that you are dealing with, it's better to be right in the middle of the war rather than be away. Even technology, I think I am what I am today because I wanted to keep pace with my children. Whether it was a Google map when it came, or whether it was paying online, making some mistakes, some money got stuck somewhere, or doing some online transactions. It was just because I did not want to depend on a youngster to tell me, do it this way, do it that way. So once you learn and update yourself. You're curious. How does this happen? I think that makes you ready to be a guide and facilitator to a child or to an equal peer also.
Very true, ma'am. Very true. When we're talking about being guides to children, there's this question which has come from Mr. Arun Varat Pandey. Yeah, I hope I've pronounced your surname correctly, Mr. Arun Varat Pandey. Thank you for joining us, and we're very enriched that you've shared a thought with us. I'll just read verbatim. He says, your experience with a class of varied groups is indeed unique. How could you relate it to identifying individual aptitudes or skills in a class?
Yes. Thank
I'll
you,
just read
Mr.
it again.
Arun Varadapande. I hope you're the same IT guru. And even if you're not, it's lovely to answer you this question, because I know one Arun Varadapande who's my guru in IT. So, when I went into that class, I was flabbergasted that how am I going to deal with children who are so different? So the first thing that I said was, I asked them, how are you in this classroom? Because I didn't know, the principal didn't tell me anything. He said, this is your class, and just walked away. So they said, hum sab nalayak hai, in Hindi, saying that they were absolutely the backbenchers and the ones who were not fit for the class. They have been sent here. Hum sab nalayak hai, not layak. So the first thing I told them and connected with them was that, oh God, aap nalayak ho, तो मैं भी सबसे नालायक हूँ, because आज ही मेरा पहला दिन है as a teacher. It's my first day as a teacher, so I'm as clueless as you are. So that connected absolutely immediately. I was pretty young. I must have been around 23. So they could see me as their friend immediately. They didn't think me as a teacher. The second thing was that I asked each one of them, not keeping their height or weight or age in. I said, who are the children who know alphabets? Who are the children who know small additions? Who are the children who can identify, the number names or something? And that is how I segregated them. It was not on age or this thing, because each of those kids were from some villages. So some had gone to school, some had not seen a school, their parents had also not seen. So they had no, I would say, they had not gone through any kind of initiation into learning. So it was not on age or height and weight. It was on what they knew. So that was my baseline. And then I kind of made it into groups. I put all those chairs together. I didn't know that such things happen, for me, the classrooms have always been like a army barricade in one line. And I think most of the schools still have it, except some of them who, have furniture which you can move and change. So I kind of put them together and made them into groups on their learning abilities, or the benchmark, or the minimum levels of learning, I would say. And then started 3 parts on the blackboard, which was targeted to each of the groups. So I would teach, I would tell the others, you listen. You can also become a teacher. So you listen, I'm going to tell them about the alphabets or small 3-letter words or 4-letter words, and how to put it into a sentence, and then give them some worksheets. We didn't have any, assistant teachers, no such luxury. Just no fan also, because it was a pathway. So just carry on, these things don't matter. I have always felt hardware doesn't matter. What kind of chair you sit, what is the decor of the room. It is the software. It is the software. It is the software of the mind and the heart that makes teaching absolutely brilliant. So that's how I did it for numerics, for languages, for general studies. And I must also share that after almost about 3 to 4 months, many of them were moving from one level to another level. I had 4 levels in the class. One is who didn't know anything, I mean, for them, everything was new. One is just about new some things. One is somewhere close by, who had been to a school, to a village school. And another one who was on the borderline because of behavioral problems, more of behavioral problems, because they were older than their class. And I think they didn't get any inspiration at home. They are all farmers with a lot of money in Punjab. And coming to school was just, one of the activities, whenever they felt like. So neither the parents were bothered. But all of them, except two who had very severe learning disabilities, all of them went back to their classes. And from Nalayak, we all became Layaks. That's how I did, Mr. Arun Vardapande.
And Mr. Arun Vardapande has responded. He says, yes, he's the same.
Oh my God, namaste. Yeah, he's our IT guru. When we didn't know what is Google or Hotmail, he's the one who taught us. So namaste to my guru.
Okay. So, talking about IT and, in general, industry or organizations and what they look at, one answer to the lack of resources in organizations is probably the formation of, business education alliances that typically provide economic support to the academic institutions and needed personnel to specific corporations. These have seen more than a few disadvantages in the recent times. Do you think, along with universities, even industry should be linked to educators?
Absolutely. I had some wonderful experience with the industry. For example, it's now in the NEP that they have talked about coding. But I remember about 7 to 8 years back, in the army school circles, we had started coding through companies who were sponsoring mentors to schools to learn coding, to make small apps. And that was many years back. It's not recent. And that really helped. Apart from that, we also got a lot of support from Infosys, to understand how, their processes go. So I had some good, maybe because I had always been the head of Army Public Schools. So that is held with reverence in the civil public's eyes, and they want to extend all kinds of help to those schools. So maybe I was lucky, but I did have a good connect with the industry. Similarly, when Google came into education, so the company Google, they sponsored a lot of events and learning in schools. So did Microsoft do. I think it's important that even schools are connected. But if the schools, the university, and the industry is connected, it will be fantastic. Because then what happens? The learning happens at different tiers, at the school level, then the university level, because that's what we are all talking about, that our students, even who pass out of universities, are not industry ready. They're not work ready. So they undergo one more training by the company or outside to become work ready. So I think if this synergy is there between schools, the university, and the industry, I think that would be a great idea. And in any case, why are we in education? To understand how we will lead a productive life apart from making money. It's also how we are going to lead a productive life. How are we going to make life better for humanity and the world? So it is important that we all connect. And that's where I think would be the ideal system of education.
Yes, ma'am. On that note, then they say formal education will make you a living, self-education will make you a fortune. What are some of the online platforms that have helped you upgrade yourself?
Well, online
Or
platform.
or
Sorry.
offline, what are those platforms? What are those stages that have actually, what are those instances? What are those opportunities, if I may, just widen the scope of the discussion? What are these things that have helped you upgrade yourself?
Yeah, if I talk personally about me, my first learning, if I remember back on absolute systems way of learning or conducting an examination was through the IIT JEE. My school was the center. So, as a center superintendent, I was invited to Delhi IIT. So, there were two questions in my mind. My own brother was from IIT, but I never understood why he was so different from others. And everybody looks at them in a different way. Was the way it functions. It was the way it functions and how the students are trained to be self learners and not rote learners. So the examination per se, the way it was conducted, right from opening that little box and displaying and how each class has been, and the very clear instructions was my first learning in making the examination system in my school flawless. It may sound very cliched because I think many schools get their schools as IIT JEE, but I was curious. I did not leave it to my coordinator or my clerk to. I was curious what came in every or that booklet that they gave, and why they packed it in a certain way in different color envelopes or whatever it was, and why it was important that one of the professors came to the school personally. It was not sent to some bank and we pick it up from there and conduct the exam and all that. It was they come themselves, and how they stuck to the time and the formalities. I think that was my first learning. The second learning was, a course in the IIM, which gave me an opportunity to go into another premium institute. There was a strategic management training some 15 years back in the IIM. And it was a residential course. So staying there and having a packed day right from 7 o'clock till 12 o'clock at night. So we used to get some 5 hours to sleep. In that also, we would think of the case studies. So that opened up a lot of ideas how if you have a very interesting curriculum, you don't get fatigued. You can keep your children occupied through a day if you have a very, very creative curriculum. And also it taught why time management was important and why planning to the smallest T was important. So that was the second one. The third one, I'll just give you one more, was when I visited England on an exchange program. And although I was a high school principal, the school that I was given by the UK government on that exchange program was a primary school. What I found there is that one is that they were very business-like. Their processes and systems were in place. They knew exactly what to do. The teachers were, they had to do not only teaching, but also taking care of the surroundings. Means if their classroom was dirty, they'll have to put the things together. They did have a janitor, but nobody would treat the janitor like he'll come and clean it. You have to put everything in place. And also the way the teachers planned their lessons, the professionalism, and also the time management, because they were very business-like, very professional. It's not like, oh, we have a visitor today, chalo, we'll have dosha. We are such great hosts in India, but we waste a lot of time in all these frivolity rather than getting on to the business. There it was always business. At 8:15 to 9:15, you'll be in this class. So that was another learning. And I mustn't leave Japan, where again I went on an exchange program. I think the compassion, the correctness of the Japanese university, because I went to the Saitama University, was absolutely, I mean, something to learn and come home about. And the pride of the Japanese people of Japan. I mean, and the humility of not thinking that they were some great people, even though they might have written thousands of papers or invented many things. That is what also taught me that there are so many people who are greater achievers than me or have done better things. but humility is something which makes you a better learner.
Ma'am. Picking a leaf from what you just shared, ma'am. Do you think institutes of higher learning have enough courses designed for academic guidance?
I don't think they have enough courses typically for educators, because you must understand, even a teacher who's in an in-service teacher, what happens is that most of the courses would be designed for a short course by the RIE, Regional Institute of Learning or something, but what happened, the actual, the choosing from a basket is available now on Coursera and all online platforms. But I think the Indian universities also have to bring in a lot of courses which leaders, senior teachers, the ones who are just starting their profession, who can be trained. It could be a weekend course which gives them credit, and it could be something like an MBA, which people do on weekends, but for the educator. There are some courses which are on education planning and all that, but I didn't find them really useful to an educator. But the online ones are very good. And now that we have all gone into the online mode, I think it could be a hybrid mode. So even if the teacher doesn't come every weekend for a face-to-face class, but if it is once or twice a month, and the course, and I basically feel where we lack, we have a lot of these management, education management and all those things, but I think the crux of a principal or a head of an institute is that he's an academic person, and for some reason, from the time you are a coordinator, you become a manager. You can hire a manager who will keep finding faults with everyone for 5,000 rupees. Why should an educator become that? An educator is one who thinks, who's curious, as you say, who comes up with new ideas, who has a vision. And we don't have enough courses where an educator can pursue their specialization, the subject specialization. Because when I ask around, there are very few principals who ever take a class. It's on paper. The CBSE, NCRT says you have to take 12 classes, but they seem to be so busy with the humdrum thing. That child fell, this parent came, that transport was not working. Those are not the most important areas that a principal share. It has to be an academician. And that's where they lose out.
Very true. Very true. I think another side of the spectrum, if I may, are Anganwadis. I spent some time with some Anganwadis across India, and what actually came to light is, out of the 8 hours a day, let's say 3 days, 24 hours, out of 24 hours, 3 days, that is half a week, the teacher actually spends just 4 hours with the students, and rest of the time is occupied in filling registers, maintaining registers. There was this, at an average, each Anganwadi maintains at least 17 or 18 registers which need to be updated on a daily basis, and with actual data. So that's the other side of the spectrum. One side, like you said, you have principals who are so occupied with mundane things that they are left, they don't have space for their actual duties. And here you have Anganwadi teachers who are supposed to be doing one thing, and they're actually doing something else.
Where we have gone wrong is that we have had a cut and paste attitude. Somebody went to Finland, they saw something. Somebody went to England, they saw something. They just didn't even think whether it will suit to our India. So you would find not only the Anganwadi, the so-called very prestigious schools, they are just run on curriculums which are customized for all schools. Go to the left, teach this, go to the left, right, do this, then fill up something. So the teacher, what she is more bothered about filling up that, because her next salary will only come when they fill up all that. So she's not bothered whether the learning took place or not. And you can write anything in that report as long as you did some of those activities. So I think a lot of this has come from the Western world of documentation. It started in the school sector when the CCA came. When I was assigned by the CBSE to go to schools as one of the mentors to a group of schools, to a hub of schools, I would find one thing very common. A school which maintained records very well were very poor in teaching. When you went and asked the child something that they said, we have taught this, we have taught that, you asked the same question, children didn't know. Whereas a school which the records were not maintained very well, the teaching had taken place over absolutely beautifully. And I suppose it was because of the constraint of time. If you fill up records, you cannot have time with the children. So I think we need to modify that. It has to be on an app or something where they just put a tick, tick, tick and finish it off. Rather, yes, no, or if they said, how did the lesson go? I'm sure nobody's answering those kind of questions, but the so-called elitist corporate type of schools do have that. How did your lesson go? What will you do next? And all. So it is all tick, tick, tick. So I think one needs to look into that, that we don't get bogged down by data. I think it's a time for data analysis. I know that. I mean, but don't analyze so much when nothing has happened on ground.
Very true. Very true. Analysis paralysis. Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. Analysis paralysis. Absolutely.
Ma'am, taking a step back then from this, what is it that motivates you to be a lifelong learner?
What you said right at the beginning is that I would never like to be fossiled. I would never like to go out of the fashion of being an educator. I would always want children to look up to me and say, ma'am, this is where we are stuck. Can you help us? And that's what makes me a lifelong learner, because I know that as I speak now, there's a little toddler born somewhere who might come to me after 5 years and ask me a question that, why is it like this, Amuma? So I have to answer that question, and that makes me a lifelong learner.
Yes, ma'am. On that same note, Mahatma Gandhi once said, every home is a university and parents are teachers. What role are parents playing in the student's journey, to eventually become lifelong learners?
I think a family which stays together, whether it is the cooking. I remember my art of cutting vegetables without wasting too much of the real vegetables when you cut the top layer. It was taught by my mother, who said that, okay, I'm giving you all these mangoes or whatever, apples, cut the skin and put it here. The one who will give with the thinnest one, I'll give you one extra piece or something. So till today, I do peel my vegetables or things with so much of care that there is no loss of the actual. It's not that we can't afford or something, but it is a habit which has been instilled. So that's a skill that was taught. The similar way, like only yesterday, I was talking about those antennas we had in those days for TV. So every time there is wind, it will keep moving here and there. So I think every child in the house knew how to go up the pole and fix up that antenna, and somebody will be shouting from down saying that, oh yes, now we can see, now we can see. So these were life skills, whether it was a fuse which went off, or whether it was an iron box which what had to be mended, or sewing your torn skirt or something. These were life skills which were learned through experiences, which kept us going. So we don't have to throw away that piece of cloth because it just had a small tear. And also conserve. I remember, like now today we are talking about plastic bags and reusable bags and all these things. But I always grew up with our school skirts at the end of the year, because they would fade. our grandmothers used to make, bags of different sizes, one for the chili, one for rations, and one for vegetables and all that. And because they were thick, good material. So we always had a whole lot of bags, and it continued till it became fashionable not to be seen with that. Even I started carrying all those bags because it had a advertisement on it that either it was a Gucci or it was from so and so mart or something. So we all wanted to carry that till it dawned on us that, what are you doing? You're just, collecting and throwing it away. First, it was collection because we all liked those plastic bags, but later on, it was just thrown, trashed. So I think this is what, and the second is, I think, the family time to sit together to discuss the newspaper or read a book or a story, or the elder telling a story of their lifetime and connecting it to life skills. So if there is a grandmother or there is a grandfather who can talk about his life or what he did when, whatever, the partition, or when they were in college, like if I can tell my granddaughter what we did in school and how we played pranks and whatever we did, these are learning experiences. And definitely a family which has a small library is what will keep those children lifelong learners. The computers or the tabs, it'll never be like that, because when you go onto the tab, there's so much of other things popping up that your attention span becomes so low. But whereas that book, if you have taken Gulliver's Travel, it will have only Gulliver's story. It will not have something else popping up. So I think the reading in a family and to invest on a library is very important.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. As mentioned earlier, Amrita Café aims at serving as a forum to table challenges and explore solutions to cope with the current education scenario. Please do write to us at Amrita. Contact details have been made available, both of Amrita institutions and Dr. Manjula Raman. And we would love to hear from you on areas that may be included in forthcoming sessions of Amrita Café, where we aim to provide insightful information to usher transparency in and around education. Ma'am, I'd like to close this forum by thanking you for your presence and your views, which will be compiled. I would also like to highlight the efforts of the team behind Amrita Café, Parvati and Sakshi, who have made things possible and seamless today. Ma'am, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
It was a real pleasure and a wonderful evening to have you here with us.
Thank you. I enjoyed my discussion. I don't remember what all I have said, but I'll go back to the YouTube because that all came from the heart. Thank you.
It was a real pleasure, ma'am. It was a real pleasure connecting.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Good evening.